Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our instant reaction pod. Consider this stoppage time, and what a dreadful stoppage time we just encountered. I am your host, Sean McIntosh, here to review Lazio Cagliari, joined by our long lost co-host, Caleb Adams. Caleb,
He's been
good to see you again.
he's been found. He tried to escape to Brazil, but we found him.
You've got good reason enjoying your time in lovely Brazil. How's it in Brazil, and how do you feel after this one?
Things are good. Things are good in Brazil. I love to escape the cold weather. I despise it. So any warm weather, I'm a happy guy. As for the performance, happy with the result. Of course, we needed to win this. This was a must win, considering that we lost points against some teams we should be beating in the past. However, still a lot of the lingering concerns that we've had over the season in this game, I think, sprouted out, and we could have been fortunate, right, to come out of this with a 1-0 win if things just went a little bit differently. Yeah, but we'll go more into that later.
Well, let's do a quick review. This one, home match against Cagliari, bottom 3 team in the league. Our starting 11, nothing completely crazy. Nice to see Isaacson earn that back-to-back starting spot. Maybe a little bit of a surprise. Originally, it was noted that Felipe Anderson had been the starting winger. Bit of a quick change before kickoff, and we see Isaacson, Ciro Immobile leading the line, and Pedro at that left. And then starting midfield, no big changes. You've got Rovella, Guendouzi, and Luis Alberto. Of course, the injuries to Romagnoli and Casale see the return of Patrick and Gila. And this match actually starts off pretty solid for Lazio. They're attacking. Isaacson, gets it kicked off, 5-minute mark, earns a corner, 6-minute mark. Isaacson once again in the fray of things, beating his man. 1-2 touch too many, sees the ball go out of bounds, but it's some early life. And then boom, 8-minute mark, fantastic work by Lazzari, putting pressure, not giving up, taking the ball back with a nice pass to Pedro for a clean finish. And you think from there, against like a side like Cagliari, that this was going to be one where we could go home, pack it up at halftime with a few goal lead. And look, we had some chances shortly after, a free kick on the edge of the box. Luis does well, big save from their keeper. Again, 23rd minute, you've got some nice combination play between Ciro to Isaacson, back to Ciro, then back to Pedro. Just an inability to finish. And then in the 25th minute mark, what should have been a game changer, Guendouzi yanked down on a break, denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, sees Cagliari earn a red card, going down a man with 70 minutes of football action still left to play. And you think to yourself, well, between the start that we had, between just our performance in Champions League, this is the one where we can start bagging some goals and really put this side away. And I can say, from that point on, you could have turned the TV off. You could have taken a nice long nap and then maybe turned it back on in stoppage time before anything really happened. And we can fast forward all the way to that stoppage time because it got chaotic for both sides, but particularly for Lazio with some individual errors that we'll touch on that certainly scared us. So we never do anything easy on ourselves, and squeaked by. We ended up taking all 3 points. So tell me, Caleb, it is a 1-0 victory. The end of the day, they all count for 3 points. What were your 3 words or less to describe this match?
Oh boy, my 3 words were: we need more. We just need more in every facet of the game, particularly a game like this, right? It seems like we need just a little bit more, and I think we can get over this hump of being sort of a mediocre team this season. I don't know if you agree or not, but it feels like if we just adjust something that's a little bit more here and there, we can score those 3 goals a game in a game like this. We can get that second goal. We can not concede a goal. It just seems like if you just a little bit more in each area, we can get over this hump. And we didn't do that today. We did keep the clean sheet, to be fair. However, it should have been a game where we should have wrapped it up by halftime, right? We should have scored another one. And ideally, by the 70th minute, we're chilling at 2-0 at least, right? So for me, it was just we need more.
Yeah, it's tough for me to choose. I wrote down a couple words, and it seemed like they each had merit at different points in the match. I initially wrote down no killer instinct because I thought in a few phases of the game we did well, and we were actually creating some opportunities, and there just wasn't that killer instinct to finish them off. And against a side like Cagliari, you just got to put it to bed because we know that they're going to come up with one opportunity at the end, and we were fortunate enough to escape. But it just seemed like this lack of killer instinct to want to go for it, right? It was very brief early on in the match, and then we felt like, if anything, that red card almost harmed us because it felt like we had it in the bag. And we just took, the other words I put were sleepwalking, because we did just kind of go through the motions as if the 3 points at that point in the game, in the 25th, 27th minute, were then ours. And so that was really disappointing for me because we need to get things rolling. We need to get ourselves into a rhythm, and no better opportunity. My word, Caleb, if we can't score goals against a 10-man Cagliari side.
Man, that's what I'm saying. That's when I say we need more. It's just that the fact that, it's not even the fact that we couldn't score goals against them. Yes, we did have some chances, but we should, last year's Lazio would have completely been hammering and peppering and just completely just harassing them on offense, constantly just peppering them with chances. They maybe had a few instances where it's like, oh man, we gotta defend. But a lot of that time, it was them just kind of chilling in their low block and we're not forcing anything out of these teams.
Right. And most of those dangerous chances came in before the red card. I mentioned this really nice combination play between, Cheeto had a really nice flick to Isaacson, who gave it back to Cheeto, and then to Pedro. And there was really nice opportunities. And then we had some off of there was one moment where I thought it looked like our old selves, where we had a nice break on a counter, and then we never really saw it again. I don't know what. So, we always like to talk about what led to a win and what led to a loss. And this was obviously a win. So a win that for me felt disappointing. Did you leave feeling this one disappointing, or were you happy? Do you feel better or worse after this match?
I feel the same, to be honest. Which in this case would be disappointing, because in most cases, right, you want to be progressing with games, especially a game like this against an opponent like this. You expect to make some sort of strides or have some sort of extra life, have some sort of glimpses of all right, we can get this business done and do it convincingly. We didn't do it convincingly today, and that's what made it so disappointing, was that not only is it a side that is inferior quality-wise, but they were down a guy for 70 minutes. I mean, the fact that we couldn't break them apart, that we struggled to really threaten them enough to where it never felt to me like, oh man, we're on the border of sealing this game. That's very concerning. The fact that I didn't even come away thinking we were just unlucky and it's just unfortunate to not come out with the win, because we were all over them. To come out the bigger win, it more came across as, man, that we're kind of fortunate that we didn't get punished for not sealing this game earlier. So that's how I felt. in
Yeah, we
terms
were
of
we were fortunate, obviously at the end of the match, but different one. You know, obviously we lost against Salernitana, but when you just look at that match, we 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 were the better side today. There was no
yes,
questions about that.
clearly.
I mean, taking a look at the statistics, we had 61% of the possession. It was definitely death by possession. It was about snuffing Cagliari out, and that's where that sleepwalking comes into play. We were content.
Yeah.
We knew that the game would be seeked out, or at least we hoped. Unfortunately, that possession was with, I don't want to say it wasn't without intent, because the intent was to limit Cagliari from doing anything and just see this one through. And that's not the mentality that I want to see, particularly when you're only nursing a 1-0 lead.
Mhm.
You've got to find that second or third goal. Shots on
Yeah.
target, definitely a step back from what we saw against Celtic. It was only 10 total shots, 5 of them on frame. By the end of the
Yeah.
match, Cagliari nearly met us there with 9 shots, 2 of those on frame. We had 3 big chances to our credit, but we just weren't quite clinical enough with some of those. And we'll talk about the players that failed to bury their chances. But let's before we dive into some of that, who were some of those players that stood out? Who are you giving your match ball to?
I'm gonna go with. I struggle with this a little bit, because I do think that some guys particularly made some steps forward this game, and particularly Lazzari, I think had a pretty decent game. Had a great. We talk about his final product, and I thought that that ball that he put there was lovely. Pedro was another one that stood out to me where he looked lively. He scored a goal, of course, and he should have had 2. Talking about missed opportunities, he should have buried that second one. I'm going to go with Pedro in this case, because I did think that he threatened well. He got the goal. He made a rare start, made the most of it as well. Linked up well. I think that Pedro's a player because of how technical he is. He's a player that can really, you can progress the ball really quickly with him on the field. He's come from the Barcelona system. He's come from Spain. He's able to progress and combine really quickly, which is helpful. So I'm gonna go with Pedro, but there was no one really that had a showing that was so unbelievably strong that it was like undeniable. This guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I struggled actually with both today. When we'll talk about our bidone.
Yeah, I did too.
Less of a struggle maybe towards that stoppage time. I thought some guys, clearly wanted to win that award, but nobody really stepped up in a big way positively.
Yeah.
I agree. Those initially, I had Lazzari written down, the work that he did that led to the goal. Pedro obviously was involved. But when I take a step back and I think about who were the players that I can feel most hopeful about in terms of our future and where we're going. And maybe the players I'm the most proud of. I did like, again, Isaacson comes in with the right mentality. I'm really excited for how he can develop, but no players maybe earned more from me than Patrick and Gila, because again, 2 guys. One, we know my thoughts on Patrick throughout the years, but Gila had been almost discarded, and we hadn't seen him. There were talks of him wanting to see an exit from this club, rightfully so. He's not getting any opportunities, and he's a young center back. Comes from a Real Madrid system, and he has stepped up. He looked really solid. Again, we gave up nothing until the end of the match, and it wasn't really due to any of Patrick or Gila's mistakes. So those 2, just as a combo, made me feel good, because I was quite worried when Romagnoli and Casale went out, and we were going to be forced to lean on these 2 for an extended period of time. And you gotta give it up to those 2, because the defense from our center backs has not been a problem at all. What do you think of those 2?
No, man, I'm glad you shout him out because I was gonna follow up whatever you said with that as well. Of like, hey, make sure before we go to the next segment, let's give him a shout out as well because that's 2 starts they've had together, 2 clean sheets. How many back to back clean sheets have we had this season? I think that might be our first.
Yeah, probably.
I'm trying to run it back, and I don't take it for as fact, but I'm pretty sure that's our first, at most our second.
Yeah,
And
I
like
mean,
you
it's
said,
just, and it's a large part of again, limiting mistakes. I thought they were also really good when
yeah,
it came to some of the attacking phase and making some pretty smart passes and getting out of
yeah,
tricky situations. I just when I step back and I'm pretty down on this match, all in all. But the one positive takeaway for me is knowing that we can count on these two moving forward, and that's such a big sign because we all as many Laziali were afraid of our center back situation if
yeah.
Romagnoli or Casale were to go down, and now I think we can be pretty confident, and we just really got to clean up some other phases of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and then also, let me ask you this question. Assuming all center backs are healthy, who is the starting center back duo right now going out?
So Romagnoli, without question,
Yep.
that is signed in pen.
Mhm.
So I think I want to see Casale back, and the moment that he and Romagnoli are healthy, I go back to pairing them up because those two were probably the best, or you can make an argument were the best center back pairing in Serie A last year. And that is not a run of 2 or 3 matches. That was a full campaign under the same manager. So I don't believe that was an accident. I believe, Casale saw some poor form this season for sure, no doubt about it. But I think I have to take that as just a little bit of a rut. And the moment that he and Romagnoli are back, you throw them back out there, and we've got to find that. And now you know that you can rotate. We've got Coppa Italia matches, and we've got opportunities for us. But I I I think that our best center back pairing is going to be Romagnoli and Casale, and we just do a better job of rotating, allowing those guys to take some breaks. And you've got to shake Patrick's hand and say, "Well done. This is what you are. Like, you are our third center back, and when we need you to step up." And he has done so incredibly serviceable. And same for Gila. Now we know that we've got another guy in there. Should we need to count on him? But for me, I go back to those two, and if they continue, particularly Casale, if Casale continues to struggle, then maybe we start introducing Patrick or Gila a little bit more. What do you think?
Mm. Part of my face, you saw that I disagree, and for me, it's more of a matter. Unless Patrick's form and starts going down, then you throw Casada back in there. For me, it's like because one thing I've noticed with Patrick as of late, and even like the players have said it, and reporters out in Rome are saying it, is that he's really come out as sort of a leadership type figure in this locker room right now. And one thing that I noticed with him in games is Casal is a pretty quiet guy when he's out there. Like that's why Romagnoli is important to have him there beside him because he's the one sort of commanding, leading. With Romagnoli out, Patrick's really stepped up and been really vocal on that back line. And I think it has made a difference in terms of organization. I think it has made a difference in. I think part of the reason why you bring a guy like Gila in, out of nowhere, we have this sort of makeshift center back duo is that Patrick has been very vocal and has sort of taken a leadership type role in that back line. In that case, and I think the game, we haven't seen too much of Patrick and Romagnoli this season, but the games they have played together, they seem to have done really well together.
Yeah,
So I think it's more a matter of like,
here's my issue is I don't want to kill a player like Casale, who is still a young center back, who has a long future, again, earned himself a call up to the national team because of that incredibly strong play versus
yeah,
Patrick, to his credit, has always understood his role and was never one to gripe about not getting opportunities. And that's where he's just been an incredible leader on this side throughout the years, coming in and waiting and biding his time, and even through challenging moments and even through really, really poor play, continue to work at it, and now is a very, very serviceable player. I don't think he's the type of player that would get crushed, by going back to the bench. Versus Casale, I'd be worried about him feeling like he's lost his spot and maybe losing some confidence so early after playing incredibly well. So that would be my one caution to completely giving up on Casale.
True. I agree with that. I mean, that's a fair point for sure. In this case, I think for me, it's a little bit different because we are 14 games to the season. It isn't like after 5 games. It would be one thing to drop him after 5 games. That's brutal. But I think that it's tough to navigate, right? It's tough to navigate. It's a tough choice for Sadi. Initially, we thought there wouldn't even be a question, right? We wouldn't even have any conversations at the start of the season, which is a credit, right, to the center backs coming up here. But regardless, it's good to know that, hey, we're not completely screwed over if somebody gets out for a couple of weeks or whatever.
Absolutely. And we've got, again, Coppa Italia. So we've got 3 tournaments we're going to be playing in, with us advancing out of our group in Champions League. So no reason why all of these guys can't get a little bit of a run. Tell me, we're talking about some players we really liked. Who was your bidone of the match?
You go first.
Okay.
I always go first.
So I said it. This was a challenge for me because very interesting with Lazio. Their performances have been quite dreadful, particularly in attack, for so many matches this season. And sometimes there is a clear bidone, but oftentimes it is the sum of its parts that is just less than. And it's so hard to pick out one particular player because it just seems like as a system, they're all struggling. And I felt that way for a lot of today's match. I wrote down, question marks next to a few players. Like, I don't know that Rovella played particularly well. I thought Cataldi looked a lot sharper than him, but Rovella, still had some nice tackles and wasn't particularly bad. I had a couple of nice moments from Rovella that I jotted down in the 31st minute. He did really nice to spin around a couple defenders, get by them, create a lot of space for himself, and then essentially start an attack. But he didn't necessarily stand out in a big way. Luis Alberto didn't particularly play, a completely strong match, and then he gets injured. And then we get to stoppage time. And I said it felt like everybody was up for this award. Everybody was like, count me in, some hardware, I'll take the beat on it. And you saw some players like Marusic who kind of started it, because at the end of the match, it was pretty smooth sailing for most of this. Cagliari threatened with nothing, and you could have sent Provedel home. He didn't need to be there until stoppage time. And that didn't start until Marusic really had one of the poorest clearance attempts I've seen, with nobody on him at all, completely misses it, gets it wrong, and gives up an opportunity. And then Lazzari had a pretty disastrous moment.
He did.
To Lazzari because he also wins back the ball on after that same turnover, and he's the one that came up with an assist. And then Tati, I thought Tati was really poor, and this is unfortunate because I know he's a better player than what we've seen. His finishing, you and I didn't get to chat about the Celtic match, but he was pretty dreadful in that Celtic match with some of the opportunities he had. And today, the first one you can argue it wasn't his fault. Now, he gets subbed on, and shortly after, there's kind of an interesting opportunity that bounces around in the box. Tati gets a chance to get a foot on it. Now he's pulled down. It's no question should have been a penalty, but I still want him to do a little bit better. He's still in the box with an opportunity to poke that in, and then he has another chance. First, I'll say this is the 93rd minute, and it is a terrible counterattack all around. It is clueless work by everybody. Tati has a poor pass. Ball kind of bounces back to him, and he has another chance to cross it. It's a poor cross. Now, Felipe is offsides. So, again, a little bit of a lack of awareness by Felipe, poor counter. Vecino in that same play can't finish it. Now, it would have been called back offside, so ultimately didn't matter. And then, Tati has a one-on-one opportunity with the keeper, and he's got a defender on his shoulder. Should have done much better. He slows down, allows the defender to come in and make a tackle, and that should have been a goal, no doubt. And then towards the end of the match is when it gets even worse with Tati. Instead of, this is the 94th minute, instead of going to the corner and killing it off, seeing the match out, he goes one-on-one and tries to beat a defender and take a crack at it. And that leads to Cagliari coming down, Lazio taking a very soft header back to the keeper and narrowly escaping Cagliari scoring. So, poor defending, but it didn't need to get to that situation. Tati's got to be smarter and understand situations. You're in the 94th minute. You've got the ball with all the space in the world. Take it to the corner flag and see this one out, particularly with a player like Tati who's built and strong, and he's the one that you want to hold that off. So all that to say, man, it's tough. I thought that stoppage time was a really poor mental moment from Tati, Marusic, Lazari, all three of them. I'll maybe give it to Marusic because he kind of kicked that all off with his first clearance, but man, in short order, there was a lot of check marks from Tati that really had me disappointed. What about you?
Tati was mine. Tough to say, but it was just like you said. It was just amateur type stuff.
Yeah, it was.
And again, like we said in many games here. We said many games here. Like whenever Tati comes on, like, he gets a scoring opportunity. Initially like, oh, by coincidence he's getting lucky, but clearly he's doing some things right to where he consistently can get a shot off or have a good chance that maybe Cheeto hasn't had the whole game. But he hasn't finished that yet. And in this game, he really had the opportunity to put away some chances, seal this game. And even if he doesn't score a goal, you at least your job is to at least to at least close out the game. At that point, as a striker, it is your responsibility when the ball gets to you. Your job is to hold up, let play develop, slow things down, pass it back, reset the play, hold on to the ball so that they don't get a score and come back and win, right, in those final minutes. And he was just like not making the right decisions on that point. Clearly, I think he has been unfortunate in some chances, and I think it's getting to his head a bit where he's like, how am I getting this close and not scoring? And he's becoming a bit desperate just to get that first goal. The perfect opportunity, the perfect sort of example is that was on that counter where he decided we had like two other guys he could pass to, three other guys, and decided to just shoot it for himself. Where it's like, bro, like, what are you doing? That was you love to see that from a striker when it's not at that situation.
Yep. No, I think desperation is the word. He's desperate to score. He's frustrated, no doubt about it. We believe, and I think he believes he's a better player than this. But I'll tell you what, you wanna limit your own playing time, particularly with a manager like Sadi. What he did today, I mean, we'll be lucky to see him because Sadi is not asking him to go out there and score goals when he subs him on late like that. Like you said, his job is in those moments to see this game out. And he very simply did not do his job today. The goal would have been nice. It would have been great, but he almost gave up this match for us. And, Sadi has to trust you and has to trust that you understand what your role is. And today, Tati, for the first time, gave us and gave Sadi a reason not to trust him, because other poor performances have which I really think his one standout poor performance was against Celtic, because he got some chances, but that's simply just not being able to finish. That's some confidence. That's nothing to knock him,
Right.
because everything we've seen aside from finishing has been positive. Finds himself in the right place. He fights, and we love to see that. He's going to be really great when it comes to that press. But what we saw today is it shows lack of awareness, or it shows a little bit of discipline issues, where he's thinking a little bit more about himself versus servicing the team. And I hope we never see that from him again. I hope that this doesn't hurt his chances down the line. We know he's a better player than that, and we've seen a lot of positive. It's just he's in his head right now. And I was actually upset that we subbed him on. I wrote down in my notes when that sub happened that I was pretty upset for us taking off Cheeto. Not, Cheeto didn't have a particularly strong match. Like, there were some nice link up plays. Again, he's not getting the ball in places that he likes, but I thought that the game was going to start opening up because of tired legs. Cagliari was going to have to start pushing for it, and we were finally going to see some counter opportunities. And once we saw Felipe Anderson enter the match too, Felipe was able to beat some players one-on-one, and we saw some more opportunities. You put Cheeto in that chance, and Cheeto's burying it. And I selfishly want to see him score his 200th goal at home. I want to see him climb up the Serie A ranks, and I think he had something left to give in that department in this game. Speaking of Felipe, he looked pretty sharp, at least when it came to some of his dribbling and the life he gave. What do you think of him as a player off the bench?
I think he's perfect off the bench. I think, if anything, when a game is open, Felipe really struggles, in my opinion, against like low blocks and organized sides. Felipe is a player, and there's a reason why he had good success at West Ham, was because West Ham was a team that sort of sat in the mid-block, was sort of conservative going forward, didn't really hold on to the ball much. But, man, when they broke like on the attack and the counterattack, he was really good for them in that sort of role. And I think he's better suited to a system like that rather than someone that needs to hold on to the ball, recycle it. He has. Don't get me wrong, he is incredible. He's an incredibly technical player, but in terms of dribbling in tight spaces consistently and sort of those areas, it's not his biggest strength. It's in those spaces where he's open, where he's one-on-one in transition, where like Felipe really thrives in, and he can be really scary. And in a game like against tired legs, you can do that. There's going to be those openings. There's going to be those chances for counterattacks. He's also has a really strong work ethic, so he's constantly busting up and down the field, which is a nightmare for defenders. Like, for Felipe to come in against you when you're tired, it is an absolute nightmare compared to Felipe against fresh legs, organized side in the first half of the game. So I think and that's the great thing about Felipe too. I think really when we talk about Felipe, his biggest strengths, for me, it comes to versatility. He's just a great Swiss Army knife in the attack. You need to throw him up as striker, throw him up there. You need him at left wing, throw him at left wing. You need him at right wing, throw him at right wing. You need like a second striker to work alongside the striker, throw him there. You need a super sub, you throw him there. And Felipe's versatility for me has always been sort of the reason why he's been at the top for a long time, playing in the best, two of the best leagues in the world, is because of, hey, he's not the most clinical player, he's not the most decisive player, but he's incredibly versatile. He's physically gifted. He has a great work ethic. He's disciplined. And for those reasons, I think he's been able to stay at this level for as long as he has, because he really isn't like a killer player, a killer winger. And so for me, let me ask you this, and let me follow that up with this, which you might be leading into. Do you continue starting Isaksen at this rate? If you had to choose one of, if say Sakangi's healthy and he hasn't really done anything to warrant his starting position either. But let's just talk about the right wing right now. If you had to start from here on out, just from this moment right now, do you keep starting Isaacson over Felipe as of right now?
I would, yeah. I think right now you continue building off of Isaacson's positive form. We know he brings a little bit of life to that attack. I think you think about the right side with him and Lazio, and it's explosive as a right side or as any side in Serie A right now. And, almost to my reason of why I'd like to see Casale get that run. He's a young player. And let's build that confidence right now when he's feeling good about himself. And Felipe understands a role. Now, look, Felipe is in a contract year too. So Felipe is looking for a raise and looking to sign an extension. So, not unlike Patrick, where Patrick maybe can sit back and understand his role. Felipe, has been a big part of this side. But I think there's some utility with Felipe where I wouldn't be concerned about him not finding minutes. I think Zaccagni, has to also come in playing well. And Felipe can play on the left. And to your point, he can play up top if we need, right? If we don't have confidence in Tati and we need to go back to a false nine, which worked really, really well last season, in moments, we could rely on Felipe Anderson. So, subbing Isaacson off for Felipe to take a run at players with tired legs. Today he looked a little bit sharper in some of those moments. And maybe it is just resting Felipe because he plays so hard and has a duty on the defensive side. So I think if I was just looking at our starting at our fixtures coming up, let's take an eye to Coppa Italia, which is on Tuesday, December 5th. And then we've got Verona on Saturday, all leading up to the final Champions League group match against Atletico Madrid. I look at, for me, Coppa Italia is interesting. I asked this question, so let's talk about this. I like your question about what to do with Isaacson. So let's start looking at some potential lineups for these matches real quick. But I asked our guest Steven Scarpula. I had asked them the question: how do you approach Coppa Italia? Do you approach this as an opportunity to give some guys minutes that haven't particularly had a ton? So I'm thinking your Kamada. I'm thinking your Vecinos, even Cataldi, who came in today. In a normal world, you'd be looking at Gila. Obviously, Gila's getting a run now, and probably Gila and Patrick have to play because that's even if Romagnoli were to be back, that's not really the match that you want to throw him out there for to pick up a knock. So are you approaching this as a chance to get some guys a run? Or are you using Coppa Italia, particularly these early matches, as a chance to just get back in sync? Let's try and find a rhythm with what we want to be our starting 11 moving forward.
Yeah, I am using Coppa Italia as a way to rotate players and get players confidence. I'm thinking Kamada comes to mind. First of all, Richard here said it. Kamada comes to mind immediately. That's a game where I'm starting Kamada. I'm starting players that are still kind of trying to get into the swing of things. For me, it's about, okay, how can we make just the Serie A, our Serie A position in the table better? That's for me is number one focus, right? I think for you as well. How can we get top four again?
Yeah, currently, just for everybody on live updates, we played 14 matches. And we currently see ourselves with 20 points, which puts us at 9th in the table. We climbed a whopping one position after today's 3 points. Fiorentina ahead of us, Atalanta ahead of us, Bologna, Roma, Napoli, Milan, Inter, all of which have played one less match than us, with Juve currently sitting at the top of the table, who's also played 14 matches. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of climbing the table.
Yeah.
So I
yeah,
agree.
I mean,
I would use Coppa Italia in that same fashion. So let's talk then starting 11. Let's just take a look before we even get to Champions League because separately I'll ask you about that match. But so what do your lineups look like in these next two matches, which again is Coppa Italia, and then our match, so Coppa Italia against Genoa and then Verona on Saturday. And Verona also sees themselves in the bottom three of Serie A. They're currently in 19th position. So, what do you look to do?
I think you go with the same center back duo because you have to. I think you got to go Pellegrini. Like, this is another guy we didn't talk about, Kamada, Pellegrini. Those are two of the main players where I'm like, man, these are dudes that can really make an impact. As much as, Richard, I mean, Kamada was a key player for Frankfurt in their runs in Europa, Champions League. We're not getting the most out of him, not anywhere close to that.
Yeah, an interesting note on Kamada today, comes in for an injured Luis Alberto. I wonder who's to know that he was going to get any playing time or not, but comes into the match with Luis being hurt. We still have to learn what that injury was because we may have to look to Kamada regardless. And then interesting because Kamada gets subbed in a like for Luis Alberto, playing in that more attacking left mid-sala role. But then we bring on Vecino, and the swap is Vecino for Pedro. So now Kamada is playing out in the left as a winger with Felipe moving to the right. So, we've seen Kamada in varying roles. We've seen him play alongside Luis Alberto. We've seen him play as the Luis Alberto role. We've seen him now playing at that winger position. So we need to figure out what to do with Kamada because, to your point, and what Richard said on YouTube was he was a massive player for Frankfurt. This was a big signing for us, a player who is not under long-term contract, that we are at risk of losing on a free. And one that has more to give. I don't think we've put him in a position to be successful, but also on his note, he hasn't done his part to look particularly sharp when given an opportunity. So to me, Coppa Italia is that moment. Whether or not Luis is injured, I agree. Kamada has to get a run. Yeah. He's got to be put out there. And Pellegrini, my goodness, can we just see this kid? What happened? I mean, this kid was getting some playing time this year. He had gotten a start in Champions League, with unfortunately having to come off injured, which was so unfortunate. But every time we've seen him, he has played well. And so I'm just at a loss for words of how he has just been buried. So let's hope against Genoa. What do you do then? What's your ideal? Because Serie A is obviously we're behind, and we've got to pick up the pace here to have any hope of European play. And I say European because I've completely lost hope in a top 4 finish. So, what's your best lineup? Are you going with your best lineup against Verona?
There's 2 ways I'm looking at it here, and I'll give you my lineup real quickly and explain the reasoning. You go with the same center back duo. You throw in. I'll actually go with. I would go with Hisai right back, Pellegrini left back. Have a little balance there, right? Lazzari, who puts in huge shifts every time he's out there, and he does a lot of running. Get him some rest. And then I go in the midfield. This is again where it's always pretty tricky. I think you start Vecino. I think because Vecino hasn't really played too many minutes as of late. I think you start Vecino. You start Kamada midfield as well. I think depending on Luis Alberto, you play either Aguilera or Guendouzi, right? And if it's Guendouzi, he's the 8th. Vecino goes to 6. If it's Ravella played like half the minutes today, so he should be able to be fine in Coppa Italia. So you go Ravella as the 6th, Vecino and Kamada as the 8s. That's what I would do because Lazzari, Guendouzi have all put in have been playing a lot of minutes as of late. And then up top, I think you start Tati. You go Isaacson again at right wing. Isaacsen's 22 years old. Like he can play these minutes. You throw him in there for 60 minutes, then take him off. Be ready to go for league play later that week. And left wing, do we know the update on Zaccagni? How long is he going to be out?
No, I haven't heard an update on timeline.
Left wing, in that case, depending on whether Zaccagni is hurt or not, I think maybe you throw Felipe at left wing. Give Pedro a little bit of a rest. Bring Pedro in the 60th minute as well. So that'll be my lineup.
Okay. Would you – how much are you prioritizing this match against Atletico Madrid? Because it's sandwiched between Verona and then Inter, 2 Serie A fixtures. We're out of the group, but the draw becomes a lot worse. You're facing a first place team, and I honestly haven't even looked to see who our options are. But how much are you at this point prioritizing that versus a couple very important Serie A fixtures?
Well, you obviously have to focus on the Serie A fixtures. However, with that said, we're only you also sort of alleviate a bit of that stress in Champions League if you're going against a softer side. Every team you're going to play in this competition is going to be tough. But like the difference between a opponent you play if you finish second, according to opponent you play who finishes first, it could be the difference between a Real Madrid and like a Porto. That could be the difference between the first place and the second place finish in this. Me personally, for personal reasons, I would like to see us try and go for the win against Atletico. It's a competition that we've had a lot of success in this year. We've really shown a different side to ourselves in Champions League, and I would like to keep that going. And I think it will translate to also putting us in league play as well. And we have the depth to rotate. We have the depth, right? We shouldn't need our best 11 against a Verona side before the Atletico game. But
we shouldn't.
Yeah. So, but that's for me. For me, I would really like to go all out for the Atletico Madrid game.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I think this is the most high-profile team that is in our group, and it is a chance to scalp a big club and to do it in Spain with all eyes on. And this is always a branding opportunity, some global awareness. So I think these are the matches you've got to go for. Regardless, and let's hope that what we do against Verona doesn't impact that one. So, all right, Caleb, but this has been one of our longer ones, and it's such an interesting match because we should be feeling a lot more positive. But at the end of the day, 3 points is 3 points, and that's what matters more than anything. We'll take ugly play if it means 3 points versus a scintillating style that ultimately leads to nothing. So let's hope that we continue a little bit of a run. This is now 2 fixtures in a row that we've come out with 3 points between what we did against Celtic and today. So let's keep it moving along. Let's keep this moving along. And we'll be here for every step of the ride, and Caleb will be joining all the way from Brazil, and me here in Charlotte. So next one for us is going to be the Coppa Italia and then Verona and Champions League. So Please follow us if you're tuning in on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on audio formats, your Spotify's, Apple, you name it, please give us those 5-star ratings. Goes a long way in helping us out. And then catch us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're there. So we appreciate the support. 3 points is 3 points. Win, lose, draw against the biggest of sides, against your Salernitanas. Either way, always, sempre, forza, Lazio.